Welcome to the Mile High Fishing Magazine podcast. By anglers, for anglers. The Mile High Fishing Magazine podcast features information from some of the top anglers in Colorado. Fishing reports, tips, tricks, hot bites, and much more. Come join the dudes, Eric Ali and Matt Mascarenas, and let's talk fishing.
Jason, how's it going? You're with the dudes.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Great.
So before we get started talking about anything else, you've been busy fishing today. Let us know where you've been fishing, how the bite was, and all that good stuff.
Well, yeah, we're fishing Milwaukee Harbor, and we're fishing for big brown trout through the ice. And it's really a cool opportunity because you get these Great Lakes, Lake Michigan fish that come into these harbors, and it's realistically, in my opinion, probably one of the very best opportunities to catch, brown trout over 10 pounds through the ice. I mean, they get fish over 20 pounds. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it's 6-pound test, really small. They really require some finesse, and it's like a bowl in the china cabinet when you get one on. It's cool.
So what are you guys catching these big browns on?
Excuse me?
What are you catching these giant browns on?
A lot of spawn sacks, and so
nice.
We collect the eggs from some of the females, and you can catch a few on lures, but by and large, the spawn sack is by far probably the most effective, and you can catch them on minnows too, but it is just cool. I mean, we caught, we probably caught at least a half a dozen today, that were, most of them were over 10 pounds, so a pretty cool fishing experience.
See, I try to tell Eric over here, I got some, I used to tie my own spawn sacks, but I bought some at a store. We were going to fish brook trout. And I was telling Eric over here how great spawn sacks are, and he wasn't having it. So I'm glad he got to hear again. I got to get reassurance that they're actually good. They actually work.
Yeah, it's just, some people don't like to use a spinning rod.
Exactly. I'm a bass guy, so I'm also one of those guys that doesn't use a spinning rod that
It's
much.
tough for me to sit next to him sometimes, Jason. It really is.
But guys, we talked to Jason yesterday, and there's some things about fishing in general and the industry side of things we really want to talk about. But Matt is going to kick me in the back of the head if he doesn't talk to you about trolling at least a little bit. So Matt, go ahead.
I mean, the biggest thing I want to ask, so we're getting into that kind of time frame here, even though we are in a unique situation. We haven't been in a handful of years where we still have ice on the water. March 1st, we're usually putting the boats out on the lakes. The majority of our bodies of water have ice. They're covered in ice. So as soon as we get that ice off, it's a lot of guys around here start trolling lead core, or they start trolling stick baits at night. I know from watching your show and really knowing a lot about you, you love to troll, and I've learned a lot by watching your shows trolling. What are some of the favorite tactics to do this time of year when that ice does come off and you do start trolling? Because we don't have river systems out here, so we can't go and jig. So a lot of the stuff that we do is trolling, and at night we can cast, but we do a lot of trolling here. What are some of your favorite tactics to do when it comes to cold water trolling?
And you're trolling for walleyes?
Trolling for walleyes, yes.
Yeah, one big thing that I'm a real big believer in is using your bomb out trolling motor to troll. Okay. And especially at night, especially early in the year, because you can just get your speed so dialed in. I mean, you go like 1.1. Sometimes it's amazing. I like to hover right around that mile an hour sometimes, like with a floating Rapala or a Samo Sting, Husky Jerk. Mm-hmm. And you can just crawl along at 1 mile an hour, 1.3 miles an hour. You can just creep along, and I can turn sharper. And especially if I'm fishing after dark, and say I'm fishing like a shoal or a reef or a gravel bar or something where it's, say, 8 feet of water. A lot of times I find that I can run it, like maybe halfway down in the water column. And so the other thing I like to do is hold on to the rod. And sometimes I'll even use a spinning rod versus a line counter, because it's not rocket science. I mean, it's a cast behind the boat.
Yeah. And
if you let out too much line, you're going to start bumping bottom. You reel it up so you're not bumping bottom. But what I find is that I can make shorter trolling passes. Yep. And I can get in the water so fast. But it seems like if I use that trolling motor to really control that speed and slow down that speed, and then pump the rod and work the rod tip, by holding onto the rod, yep. I feel like I catch way more fish than if I running a touch faster. It's a general rule of thumb. I mean, there's no absolutes with fishing. I mean, you got to try stuff until something works. But
right.
Versus, you know, using line counters and, you know, the kicker or the outboard, and, you know, and going and say, you know, where you're, you know, going at 2 miles an hour, and it's harder to go slower than that. And just, you know, starting and stopping, it seems like I catch way more fish after dark by holding onto that rod and working it and pumping it and stopping it. And it's amazing. I'll stop and I'll bring that rod tip back. It's almost like they just kissed the back.
Oh, nice.
You know, and there they are. And sometimes too, early in the year, I catch more fish with mono.
Okay.
And I think what it is, they just barely nip that back treble hook, and you just have that sponginess, that stretchiness of mono, where it just and that enables you to hook up on those fish, or they barely get one hook of that treble hook, you know, somewhere in the tip of the beak, you know. And I think too, monofilament kind of subdues the action, where when it's cold water, especially early in the year, you know, there's just something about mono a lot of times. It's just magic. I mean, you'll catch them on braid too, don't get me wrong, but there's just something about that mono when you're trolling shallow that just, you know, and I think a lot of it too is just giving those fish an easy to find profile. You know, that lure isn't slashing, it's not, you know, careening off to one side or the other. It's not a tremendous amount of vibration. Right. It's like a pencil moving through the water, just rolling and flickering,
right?
Starting and stopping. Those fish just come up and just kiss the back end of it. You know, sometimes they'll inhale it, but a lot of times, I mean, you're just nicking them on those back trebles, you know, early in the year. Catch a lot more fish.
I see Chet Williams on the feed. So Jason, I fish with Chet. So I'm a bass guy. I fish with Chet all the time. All he uses is mono. You know, and since I'm a bass guy, I use fluorocarbon. I'm looking on the feed here, and I got to give my buddy Chet some credit. He says, "See, Eric, he uses mono." Ha ha ha. So Chet, I give it to you, dude. You all you use is mono. I give it to you.
And it's great. I love that you said that too, because everybody thinks that you have to have line counter reels. I took Eric out one night, and that's all we did. We were casting jerkbaits, and we started to get bit. And I was like, well, let's just cast these out and let them go and troll around a little bit. And we caught some fish. And another thing that you said that I really never really have done, I use the kicker and in the bow mount in tandem almost. I use the bow mount to steer and the kicker to propulsion myself. So I know you're a tiller guy, right? And does that
I'll run a windshield if I have to. I mean, I've ran either way. I mean, I like running a tiller, especially for all the filming I'm doing now.
Okay.
Because it opens up so much more room in the boat for my camera guys and stuff. But you know, when I was guiding, you know, I ran a lot of windshield boats.
Okay.
But, you know, the other thing too, though, is that, you know, in a lot of lakes, you know, everybody's got a map chip, right? And so a lot of the big spots are now community spots, right? And a lot of good spots are now community spots. And a lot of times it's just a matter of, you know, if you can find fish that have been left alone, fish that just haven't seen any pressure, fish that just haven't been, you know, worked over, and you're the only one there, then a lot of times that's one of the biggest things for catching fish. And a lot of times those spots are small.
Yep.
You know, line counters are a phenomenal tool for trolling. I mean, a lot of the year I swear by line counters, okay? But you look at like small spots, okay, where all of a sudden you look at like, say, a 50-yard spot, a 50-yard gravel bar, might not be a trolling spot to you because it's too small, because by the time you set up all your stuff, you're already past it, right? Whereas with spinning rods in one cast, you're fishing so quickly that all of a sudden you open up all these little nooks and crannies and little off the wall spots that people just don't touch. And all of a sudden they become trolling spots because of your speed and efficiency. And so that's, you know, like rivers are the same way. There's these little stretches that are maybe, 30 yards, right? Whereas if you had to put planer boards out, put line counters out, do all that stuff, I mean, you'd have to back up, say, 50 yards from it and then come into it. You're only in it for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, or whatever it is to walk up through it, And, the spinning rod, I can pull right up to it, cast, boom, I'm right there. And you just, the efficiency is just sped up so dramatically, so just something to consider, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, but just at the end of the day, just try to figure out what works best, so.
Great information. And one of the things I want to point out, since we're talking about spots, I think one of the biggest differences between, a good angler and a great angler is the ability to find the spots within a spot.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And as a bass guy, to me, obviously it's going to be different. For me, it's going to be a brush pile, but that one limb that, the fish feel most comfortable. So talking about, let's say a rock pile, what do you guys look for? Jason, what do you look for in regards to like a spot within a spot, like the little tiny spots?
You know, a lot of times it's some type of a change, right? Where you've got, say, a rock pile, and say all the rocks are the same size. Say they're boulder size, but on one side of it, it comes up and maybe it turns up into sand, right? And that transition might be the sweet spot, or it might be a lip or a cut that comes off of it. Maybe there's just 3 bigger rocks that are, you know, maybe the size of a dog kennel, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the sweet spot, you know. And the other thing too is then kind of figuring out how those fish move up on that spot, because really the big thing is, you know, especially like in a tournament or just when you really need to grind out a big fish, in my mind, is you got to know the spot on the spot, and then have that confidence to sit there and just keep nailing that particular angle, that particular zone. And basically you're just waiting for a fish to move in it and on it or through it.
Mhm.
And when they do, you hit them, you know, and it seems like, you know, really, really good spots, you know, the fish kind of come up on it and kind of use it the same way every time they do. And once you figure that out, you know, a lot of times you can catch a fish off a particular part of the spot one day and let it sit there for 3 days when there isn't a boat on it. That fish or that spot kind of recharges, and a new big fish will move in on it if it's a good spot that those big fish like. And by golly, it's the same sweet spot, you know. And obviously, what I like to do is I like to kind of go into that sweet spot, spend a lot of time, and then just kind of work around the area where I'm close enough where I can, you know, get back on it if a boat comes. So I don't give up the spot. But a lot of times I just kind of like to float around and kind of fish around the spot, because sometimes I learn more, I find out something new, and then I'll, you know, and then obviously, you know, times you'll catch fish that way. But, you know, maybe maybe you give it like a half hour, 40 minutes, where you just kind of float around. Maybe you're 50 yards off the spot on the spot. You're just kind of lurking around close enough to where if a boat starts poking around, you can get right back on it and not give it up.
Yeah.
But let that spot recharge, and then go back in and just kind of keep probing it. So sometimes I don't like to just sit on the spot. I mean, I have, and you can get burned or TV 0 or 0 that way, but just kind of lurk, you know, and you know, and just keep kind of checking it from time to time. And it's amazing, you know, when a fish moves on it, you know, it's a lot of times, you know, they're there for a little while and they leave. But you know, I find that a lot of times if you can imagine it like an hour duration, I catch the same amount of fish if I go in there and probe, you know, as far as the spot on the spot, maybe twice in that hour for maybe 10 minutes as if I were to sit there the whole time, you know. And then that way too, you can kind of gather more information and kind of learn the area a little better and kind of probe other parts of the spot too. But yeah, I get, you know, I like to fish pretty methodically. Once I got things dialed in, I'm a pretty patient person. So,
Nice.
You know, just having confidence in that. And that's the thing, is you'll watch, you know, other boats might know about that spot. They know, but maybe they're not confident in it, where they come and go. And the odds of just landing on that, making a cast, and boom, hitting that big fish, I mean, it's almost, you know, you have to get really, really, really lucky, especially if there's other boats fishing. And so you have to be kind of methodical and have that confidence. And that's what you'll see just boats come and go. But it's usually the people that have it really dialed in that aren't coming and going. They're keeping that lure in front of, on that spot, you know, potentially in front of fish. Those are the people that grind out those fish where, you know, it might be a bite an hour, it might be a bite every 2 hours. So that's kind of how you have to tackle some of that
stuff. I love that, and I also love we both grew up playing basketball. And basically, what you're doing is you're boxing out a little bit.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you got to box out.
At times you have to. I mean, and I'm always polite. I never. If somebody really wants it that bad, they'll have it.
Right.
But you know, at the same time, if I'm 30 yards away and a boat pulls in or starts pointing towards me, I make sure I cover my bases.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Definitely.
You know, and I've tried playing a lot of games. I mean, something that, you know, if the spot's not a spot on the spot, just kind of a general area where that's holding fish. I can't tell you how many times where, you know, when a boat comes in, I'll just pull up and leave. And then, but I get far enough away where it looks like I just kind of gave up on it. And a lot of times I'll just kind of look back, and then once you know it, they pull up and leave 5-10 minutes later too, because they see you leave. They go, "Oh, there's nothing here."
Yeah.
So, is that called the net chasers?
And catch them.
Yeah. Yeah. Those.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's what, you know, they might have caught them there the day before.
Right.
There you go.
And
you gotta give people the benefit of the doubt, you know. But and that's backfired. I mean, sometimes I pulled up and left, and I see the guy later. "Oh, you shouldn't have left. That spot was floated." Oh, I know. I overthought the day. I overthought things, you know. So. But yeah, there's a lot of mind games sometimes in fishing.
Oh, definitely. And Eric knows a lot about. He refers to being close as booger close. Says
Yeah.
he gets he's a kayak guy a lot, so he fishes out of a kayak a lot, and he gets kind of bent out of shape when they get booger close, when you can see boogers in their nose, and that's what he says get too close.
And it happens. And the same thing, I try to stay polite the best that I can, but going back to basketball, I played basketball growing up, and I was a physical basketball player, so I got no problem boxing out.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But talking about fishing in general real quick, one of the things, guys, we talked to Jason yesterday, and it was so refreshing just to hear your commitment to the growth of the sport and how near and dear to your heart it is. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday is, today's social media age, and, a lot of the younger folks that are getting into fishing, they catch that fish and they think it's and we want them to share the fish and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, one of the things that you said yesterday, and I want to get this exactly right, Jason, and you said it's not so much about learning about the fish when you're out fishing, especially when you first start. It's about learning about yourself. So can you talk real quick about what we need to do as a community to get more people involved in fishing? And then the second question, just some tips for young people getting into the industry.
Yeah, there's, as far as social media, it's great that people post pictures. And like we joked yesterday, it used to be back in the day, you catch a bunch of nice fish, you drag them up on shore on a stringer and show them off. Whereas now, you can show them off without having to kill that fish. And so just from a catch and release standpoint, from conserving, big fish, I think it's been good for the resource. And obviously, people, sometimes people are smart enough to maybe block out the background, or they scribble it out, or they get it out of focus, and there's some people that aren't, whatever, and then people get upset because you're highlighting a specific spot or whatever. But, people come and go on spots, but it's always good to see more people fishing.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. And, and if you have to share the lake with people that are out there for the same reasons as you, that's okay. We can all work together. We all want the same things. We all love the same things. But, with fishing, obviously there's this quest to learn as much as you can about the fish and the spots and the tactics and everything else. But, it's also is a opportunity to learn a lot about yourself, whether it's elk hunting, whether it's, anything that takes a commitment and takes some effort. You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. The highs are high and the lows are low. Especially take something like going up into some remote area in Manitoba to fish for lake trout, or, your snowmobile's stuck all day in snow, or you're up on a mountain elk hunting and the elk blow out and now you got to go over to the next ridge. It's, the lows are low, and you learn a lot about yourself. You learn pretty quickly who your buddies are and who you want in your foxhole and who you don't, when things are down, because there's just certain people that have a hard time handling those low points. And it's something sometimes where you have to dig deep inside yourself just to kind of, keep trudging along. And a lot of times with fishing for me, I was never really good at it. I was just persistent, and I can't stress how important that is enough, is that you just have to be persistent, so things aren't going your way. So you've had a tough day, you just got to be persistent. I can't tell you how many times, you look at, people have done really well in tournaments that had terrible pre-fishing, but they just got up that next day and they went after it. And sometimes the people that have phenomenal pre-fishing, what happens? It's almost a kiss of death, where nothing pans out. And so, you learn a lot about yourself hunting and fishing. You learn a lot about the people you're with. And, I guided for many years, and I often saw that dynamic. It was pretty interesting, as a waterfall guide, there's people that, always one guy in the group, it seemed like they claimed that he shot every duck, right? And there's always one person that would always take the prime blind, right? Not without any regard to his buddies. You kind of really figure out real quick who a person is. I always joke, before you ever marry your daughter off, just take them deer hunting for a week, or before you ever go into business with somebody, just, go into a flying camp in Canada on an island for a week. And basically, you'll know everything you need to know about that person, And so sometimes hunting and fishing can be really a good time for self-reflection. We're all trying to make ourselves better, trying to improve on ourselves, and it's always a work in progress. But I think sometimes one of the great things about hunting and fishing is that it does give you an opportunity to see what we need to work on. And whether it's even sometimes you put in a hard week and you fish hard in a tournament, and at the end of the day you just get your butt handed to you, going over and shaking the guy's hand that will beat you. And being and having your head up and it being decent, versus sniveling and he did this, and he, sometimes you'll see the worst of people too, and don't be that person, be the, work on making yourself better from it. Don't let hunting and fish, I mean, so a lot of times hunting and fishing can bring out the best in people. It's good for people. It's very therapeutic, but every once in a while, you hear of somebody, cheating in a local weekend bass tournament. For what?
I know.
$50 on the line and a couple of coupons. I mean, but I mean, that's where somebody had let hunting and fishing make them worse.
Yeah.
I mean, there's and so for anybody young getting into it, is fish for the right reasons. Fish because you love it, because you love what it does for people, and and just be a student of angling, and don't worry about how many stickers you can put on your vehicle, or,
there you go.
Don't worry about that. So that's irrelevant.
Right.
Fish for the right reasons. And the other thing too is that if you do that, you'll have that passion your entire life. I've seen so many people that maybe love themselves a lot more than they love the resource or love the industry.
Yeah.
And those people flame out. They come and go.
Yep.
I mean, they don't ever last, because it's just, their passion isn't in the right place.
Well, I think all of us speaking here, and that, Brant, we've all been here before social media, and I think all of us fell in love with fishing when we were little kids.
Before social media was even around, for sure.
So, and again, back to the conservation thing, when I caught, I don't care what I caught big when I was a kid, I ran it up to dad.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But there comes that point in time where you've been doing it long enough, and you're not fishing for other people anymore.
Right.
You're fishing for yourself. And I couldn't agree more. I think that there's days where, you put the puzzle together. There's other days where, somebody's infinite wisdom tells you that you're not supposed to think about the puzzle just now. Relax a little bit and just have some fun on the water. And fishing does that. You know what I mean? And the other thing about fishing that we talked about yesterday too, when it comes to voting, when it comes to keeping public lands open and all these other things, guys, we need more people fishing. We need more people hunting. And the best way that we can do that as a community is to recruit them. And it not just, guys like Jason, who's doing his part 1,000 times over by inspiring people, but whoever's watching this, take your neighbor fishing.
Yep.
Here in Colorado, we've got a Sam Heckman, Frank Villa. We got so many great guys that bend over backwards to take kids fishing, and that's great. And we have to do that as much as we can. But think about your neighbor too,
right?
Or your cousin, or just anybody. If you guys can do us a favor, anybody watching this podcast this year, just take one new person fishing that's never been before.
Right. And he said it right there. And I say it all the time. If you're not winning, you're learning.
Yeah.
And just
absolutely
keep learning, and failure's just another opportunity to win the next time.
Oh, for sure. Well, and Jason, we thank you so much. You're all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, guys. His YouTube channel is absolute fire. JasonMitchellOutdoors.com. Dude, you've been so refreshing, and you're so passionate about the outdoors, period. You know what I mean? It's just, we can't thank you enough. Matt, you want to leave Jason with anything?
I mean, I echo everything Eric said, and I love your rods, by the way. I don't want, I own the planer bore rods, and I love them. I've had them for years. I bought some of the first ones that came out. So go check those out, and go watch the show. Jason Mitchell Outdoors on Fox Sports. I believe he's on the Fox Sports Nets Midwest, and then subscribe to the YouTube channel.
For sure. Oh, and Jason, real quick,
thank you guys.
How soon do you think the brown trout content will be up? Were you guys filming that, or
we'll air that?
Awesome.
Oh yeah, we're filming it right now, but we won't air it till November. I mean, this is going to be over in a week or two. When the ice goes out.
Mm-hmm.
So what we try to do is try to film stuff and then push it ahead enough where it's relevant for the upcoming season.
Awesome.
Because otherwise, what we find is, say I film a trolling show in the spring, well, by the time it airs, it's late spring,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden that content's in hindsight, and there's different ways to do it. I mean, some people will try to film a show every week and then try to air it, a week or 2 weeks later or whatever. But what I find is that so many people end up on that spot a week or two later that way, and nobody's catching fish.
Yeah.
And so our format is, we try to make it educational, where we can teach people the nuances that, that we've figured out, or that, the people that we're fishing with have figured out, and share that information. So that way they've got more knowledge, better information to make decisions to find those fish in that situation as it approaches. And so a lot of times we're working out 6 to 8 months ahead, just so that we can make it relevant ahead of that next seasonal cycle per se. But in getting back to kids fishing, what's interesting is that there's been kind of this a mindset, I guess, if you will, that if you don't grow up hunting or fishing, you're probably never gonna do it. And I think at one time there was a lot of truth to that, because I think at one time a lot of the people that we had entering hunting and fishing, they did it because their parents did, or they did it because a close personal friend, an uncle, a neighbor, whatever, did it as they were growing up. But what we're finding now, especially with so many single mom households and just different environments that kids are growing up in now, especially urban environments, is that that's starting to change.
Yeah.
And that, for example, there's a lot of kids fishing events and different things where they give out tackle, and they get 50 kids lined up on a bank, trying to catch something that bites, and it's a very short window in they get exposed to it, and it might be favorable, it might be irrelevant, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But hunting and fishing takes such a mentorship.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing now, a lot of the stuff that I'm reading now is that a lot of that recruitment's actually coming from older people. It's coming from 30, 40, 50-year-old people that that were around it. Maybe they weren't, but all of a sudden they got exposed to it, and all of a sudden they've got the time and money where they don't have to worry about mom dropping them off on a river or riding their bike somewhere. Now they've got the time and money and resources to actually pursue that. And so, it isn't just about taking kids out fishing anymore. It's even it could be a 40-year-old coworker, or a neighbor.
Great point.
But
Great point.
There's a lot of older people that are really getting. What's really cool about this is that there was a time where a very small percentage of the people caught most of the fish. It took a lifetime to perfect that skill set. Whereas with the technology now, you can get really, really, really good at fishing in a short amount of time. The learning curve is dramatic. You look at map chips, you look at, even the reels cast better, even like a bait casting reel today, a $70 bait casting reel today would have been top of the line in 1986. Okay. And so, you look at how good the learning curve is so fast now that now all of a sudden, I know people, for example, that just started ice fishing or just started walleye fishing. And they've been maybe doing it for 4 years, but there's so much information. There's so many different ways to learn. Right. The equipment is so good that they can really get up to speed and get competent where they can go out and be successful in a pretty short amount of time. In 3, 4, 5 years, they kind of know their way of the land. So I think that's a pretty good element of the industry too that probably isn't getting said enough. So
definitely, great point.
The thing I love about that too is once they jump on and through YouTube and all the other stuff and they get to where they're good sticks in a short amount of time that took. It certainly didn't take me 3 years, but they can start teaching other people.
Well, yeah, we do a lot of fishing clinics for kids and for adults as well. And I had an ice fishing clinic this year that I had 35 people come out on the ice, and 32 of those people never ice fished before. And after they left, they were all asking me questions. How do I do that? And these were the parents, because like you mentioned it, like you'll go to a clinic and they'll get exposed to it, but then there's some times that they might not be able to go out because the parents they do not know what to do. Parents ask me all the time, how do I keep doing this? I'm like, well, these are always great resources to come out and learn, but go to YouTube. Go YouTube this, YouTube this, you give us a call. Yeah. So there's and I use that all the time as tools, as resources to go look it up. And we do live in a YouTube age to where you can YouTube it. And we were talking about it before the show, YouTube and fixing your car, YouTube fixing something, whatever. So it's there's no excuse. There's no excuse.
No, and we love all the information that's out there, but at the same time, the simplicity of a crawler under a bobber.
Can't beat
old.
It.
It'll never get old. I don't care if you're walleye fishing, bass fishing. You see the bobber go down, your heart stops.
Red and white go down away. For sure.
Jason, if you got time, we actually got a question brought in here. Shore fishing for night walleye. Do you have any tips for somebody targeting spring walleye at night from the bank?
A lot of times, for fishing riprap or causeways, maybe a lot of times it's like a man-made riprap rock type structure. Sometimes not. Sometimes just a natural gravel shoreline where you've got, kind of a, it's got to be, typically shallow, but it's got to kind of stair step down where maybe on a good cast, you might be able to reach out maybe 6 to 8 feet of water. If you're young enough or good enough shape to wear waders, that opens up a lot more shore fishing opportunities. But, pinch points where there's like funnels that concentrate current can be a prime location. The riprap, Obviously the walleyes, they'll spawn on that hard bottom, on that rock bottom, but the males will stick around for a long time. And so sometimes you can catch fish, especially after dark. In every fisheries, some fisheries don't fish well after dark. A lot of fisheries that have pretty clear, good water visibility do. But, throwing, same thing as the trolling baits, the original Rapalas, the Samo stings, husky jerks, Smithwick rogues, those are really popular options. And sometimes too, you can just throw a jig in a white twister tail. As simple as that is, it's caught who knows how many tens of thousands of walleyes from shore in different places around the country. And so that's nothing to overlook. I mean, you can in some places just use like an egg sinker with a short snell and a floating jig head that's just on a sliding rig, and then just hook a leech or a minnow on that floating jig head and cast that out there and let it sit, and that catches walleyes from shore as well. But and I think if in most places on most lakes, if you were just to go into a local bait shop, you could probably find out pretty quickly some popular areas where people fish from shore.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, I did a lot of shore fishing. I mean, I used to ride my bike down the river almost every day and fish. And it's amazing how much information you glean from other people that are down there. You stand next to somebody 3 rocks down long enough through the night, you're going to start talking, and I can't tell you all the things that I learned from just old timers that, were kind enough to, share a few tips with a young kid, that rode his bike down there, So, there's some great fishing from shore. A lot of times when we're fishing in boats early in the year, we're fishing near shore.
Right.
Sometimes there's times when the shore fishermen do better than the boats early.
For sure.
Oh, awesome. Jason, thank you so much for coming on Mile High Fishing Magazine podcast. So refreshing. And like we said, your commitment to the outdoors and growing the sport, it's just awesome. We appreciate you a ton. And if you ever come down to Colorado, we'd love to wet a line with you.
Definitely.
And guys, you know where to find Jason Mitchell. He's all over JasonMitchellOutdoors.com, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Fox Sports. Jason, thanks again so much. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, guys. I'd love to come down there. We'll have to do that sometime.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Bye.